Yo, I'm almost there. God damn. Yeah, I fucked that up. I had planned to be out here with this brand new intro. Hold on. What does that say over there? Top wolves up in this. Hold on. Let me get the chat to where I can see it here. My eyes are fucking tired. I was up all late last night. We had a really good first show of the new year. Shit was fucking dope. If you watch the other show, you know what I'm talking about. That was fucking hilarious. But now we're doing a whole new show right here. What do we have here? There are two wolves. One is gay. The other is gay. You are gay. Yeah, really fucking smart there. Just makes you think, think so hard. All right, what do I got? I've got the fucking chat hooked up and everything. Good God Almighty. So here's administrator with It Was Beautiful Lodi. Oh, cool. I can block people right from the fucking chat. That's amazing. I didn't know that I could do that even. But we don't have to block you just yet. So good God Almighty, this is day number 31 of our stream, and we have like a brand new thing. So while I'm Niagening it up, we have like an intro for this stream now. I made it just yesterday. Premiered it on the other show last night. And now you can see it for the next 2.5 minutes. Enjoy. Loving that right there. Yes, good morning, Rogue Editor. It's your boy, Zach ZYZ, coming at you for the 31st. That's a solid month, a little bit more, actually, if you want to count the fact that we zapped the first day there, just because it was copyright infringing, and I think we wound up re-editing the whole thing there. I can't believe that we have got 40 chapters done in 30 days, which means that we are getting like 1.3 chapters done a day. So that's not too bad. Some of these chapters are long as fuck. But then again, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, some of these chapters are exactly one a fucking page long. And it's just one word on the chapter. There are two of those like that. And it's both the star ball being upset and happy there. Okay, so on Saturday mornings, generally, the game plan is just to keep it like a little bit discreet for the most part. We're just going to read through the editing work that we've done for the last couple of days. I think there are about maybe 2 or 3 chapters that we can get through. Just a parental warning. We're starting to get into the book where there's a lot of fucking. So if you don't like fucking, then you're kind of out of luck. But I like fucking. So yeah, it's all I want to read about, honestly. Like that's the biggest thing that I want in like a novel or something that I'm reading. At some point, I just want somebody to get drilled. And that hasn't happened yet in this book, but it might. You never know. Yeah, I'm still like stuck in showman mode from last night. I don't have any of my powers of what do you want to call it? Like empathy or love or any of that good stuff. All right, there's Big Jira, who says, "I love to heck." Oh, there we go. Yeah, my eyes are so tired this morning, man. Like not seeing straight at all. But I just didn't get sufficient sleep. Is the thing there. Okay, so you guys can remember chapter 40. So this is a Monday morning. After all the big shit went down, we had the big party thing. And last night, our main character. So I guess I should give a little intro here. This is the story of a young woman who discovers an alien probe and decides to just carry it around in her pocket, wholly unconcerned with any consequences that might result from carrying an alien probe around in her pocket. And it's starting to get weird. Turns out that it's not a good idea to carry a piece of alien technology with you all the time. And things are starting to get a little bit hectic. So yeah, we'll see how that all works out for her. But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed the new intro. I feel like I want to redo it. Actually, like while I was working on that one, I saw like some neat techniques that I could mess around with. But for right now, it's okay. I like the. I'm a big fan of that Flamingos song. I Only Have Eyes for You. I remember it playing in the car as I was driving back from Montreal on one of my like biggest heartbreaks ever. And yeah, I really learned a lot about women in Montreal. But yeah. So apparently the song is pretty good. Also, we modified it enough that we're not infringing the copyright. That's right. So if you want to know how we did that, I'm happy to talk about it later. But basically, it's the sound editor that they used to make those cool, like fucking sparkly drug sessions in Dread. And it turns out that it's open source freeware software. Anybody can use it. It's a little difficult to get it to work because it's like written in Java or something like that. So like loading files and everything is a little bit janky. But I'm so glad that I did because I love the way that sounds. I actually don't get to hear the intro to either this show or the other show when I'm sitting here in the commander seat, just on account of the way that the audio routing setup goes. It would create a feedback loop if I could hear that audio routing in here because I'm monitoring the main feed rather than monitoring like if I were smart, I would just create a different feed through the routing matrix, but I just plug into the mains because I want to hear exactly what everything sounds like and stuff that isn't science fiction right there. So I hope everybody had a good week. I had a great week. Yeah, a lot of had a really good Christmas. My girl has been just super amazing these past few weeks. We're gonna hang out later today. Let me see. I went to just a stellar restaurant the other day there. We also got tacos, had like a good New Year's Eve and everything. It's been legit. I'm not looking forward to the rest of January because all you got to do is work. But I am looking forward to working on this thing, the NPR voice. This is just more like when I relax. This is what I sound like normally day to day. And then the voice you hear on the other show is like a little bit exaggerated because I'm excited because the other show is super fucking fun. Oh my God. The last night where the guy was like, I hope God condemns you to hell. Oh, love it. Love it. Hell yeah. But let's get into it here. We have several chapters to read. So here I'm working on narration, and here's a few things to keep in mind on this chapter. This chapter is all exposition, and it's exposition in the voice of our primary character. So we're doing a couple of things there. One, we're trying to speak as much as possible with her voice and convey her feelings a little bit with the writing. Narration is definitely like that delicate balance between conveying what's going on in the scene, not being like monotone, and not being so exaggerated that the reader doesn't have their own opportunity to imagine what the scenes might be. It's like a very difficult balance, and one that I'm not stellar at, but I'm working on it. I would like to become a better narrator. So as we're doing this, because there's no dialogue in this scene whatsoever, I'm going to be focusing on speaking a little bit slower than I normally would, just because I've heard that that's the way to do exposition, because it takes a little bit for the mind to visualize the action that's going on and so forth. So let's do it. This is GRAVID by Zach C. Wisey, chapter 40, Monday morning. And here we go. An orgasm woke Freya. It was a big one. Brilliance flared behind her eyelids, her hands clenched and her toes curled. Afterward, her legs trembled for so long she was afraid they would never stop. She was panting in the dark, trying to make sense of what had happened. Okay, so there we're going to... It was a big one. Brilliance flared behind her eyelids, her hands clenched and her toes curled. Afterward, her legs trembled for so long she was afraid they would never stop. She was left panting in the dark, trying to make sense of what would happen. So this is like a weird... Freya was left panting in the dark, trying to make sense of what had happened. I think it's a little too soon for that there. Oh, shoutouts to Spathy Wa, who says, we cumin here. Indeed. Let's see. Pieces of the dream were flowing together, like droplets converging into a pool. In the dream, Freya hadn't sent Dan home. She brought him into her bedroom, stripping him down, as he asked her, yeah, our flow is not good in this chapter. So one thing that can happen during the course of editing is that you break up the natural flow of, because initially when you're putting something down, you're automatically putting words into like a specific flow. And one thing about editing is you can break that flow. That's why I'm so happy that we're reading over this whole thing. She was left panting in the dark, trying to make sense of what had happened to her. Afterward, her legs trembled for so long she was afraid they would never stop. She was left panting in the dark, trying to make sense of what had happened to her. Better. That pops. Pieces of the dream were flowing together like droplets converging into a pool. In the dream, Freya hadn't sent Dan home. She brought him into her bedroom, stripping him down as he asked her if she was sure about this. She never spoke. She just pushed Dan against her bed and climbed on top of him. When she slipped him inside, he had an expression of awe, as if he were looking up at a god. In the darkness, she groped at twisted sheets, half expecting to find Dan beside her. The dream stubbornly moved to turn on the light. She felt dampness beneath her, and she paused, caught on the edge of unreality. Had she actually slept with someone? Freya had an unhappy realization that it was more likely she had her period unexpectedly. Okay. So, here's a note. This character has never fucked anyone before, so it's a little unrealistic, maybe for them to have this like very something that's not covered a lot in books, but this experience of after you get drilled and everything's flowing out of you, you're like sitting in a pool of cum. Uh, so this might not be an appropriate thought for like a 16-year-old girl who has never slept before. This gives the impression that she is experienced in sex when she shouldn't be, like, especially at this point there. But it's also not something that I want to take out. I like the ping pong to. Okay, so unhappy. Instead of having. Okay, so we take out that unhappy realization line there. And one, it's because we don't want her to be like super grossed out by her own body. She's 16 at this point. She's no longer like, "Ew, like, why is it happening to me?" She's tired of it, Like, it's just the thing that happens. She's not going to be, find it like particularly gross. So the, like, it's definitely not good if you like unexpectedly have your period and ruin a bunch of sheets and maybe your mattress or whatever, which is uncommon, but that does happen from time to time. Not to me, but that I'm aware of. But I know that this can sneak up on you. They can just, and it varies a lot from woman to woman. So we can always get away with saying this. Freya thought it was more likely. A more likely explanation was that she'd unexpectedly had her period. So there we're removing Freya thinking about it. There, more likely. Freya thought it was more likely she'd had her period unexpectedly. Okay, that's better. It was more likely she just had her period unexpectedly. She flicked on the light, prepared to see a mess, but it wasn't blood. Everything was just wet. Not quite enough for her to have peed the bed. There was no smell of urine, but still a lot, soaking through her pajamas. She would have to wash her sheets. She hoped the mattress was okay. I came in a dream? Freya felt ashamed. She began stripping the fitted sheet off her bed, feeling like she needed to do a load of laundry right away to hide this. It had soaked through to the mattress. She hung her head and shut her eyes. She hadn't gotten off at all for the last 6 months. Hadn't even wanted to try. Now, out of nowhere, she'd done this, and it felt so wrong. She tried to tell herself it was natural, that she was just backed up, but the guilt remained. Thank God Lasso was gone. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like, I feel like that tracks. So one thing that I'd like you as listeners to keep an eye on is we're trying in this edit to balance out the number of times that we're using she and Freya. Like I don't want she, and I don't want Freya. Freya being 2 syllables takes like a little bit more effort for the person to hear. So we use them kind of sparsely and then try to hop to pronouns where we can there. And we're just trying to a little bit break up the cadence so that we don't get like that semantic citation. And also like just kind of pepper it in to keep things interesting. It's one of those things that is difficult for me to independently do just because I have read this book like a dozen times already, and I'm like no longer an objective observer. So Yeah, it's one part where you can always call out if something seems awkward. Somebody say pronouns there. Yeah, I don't think we deal with trans issues at all in this book. So yeah, fuck off. My next book is totally going to be chock full of transsexuals. Just so many transsexuals. It's not even funny. Well, that's not the next one. That's probably like 2 or 3 out. That one's really cool. It's set in Albuquerque and just has like a lot of mystical shit happening in there. Not science fiction at all. It's magical realism, and those are super fun to write. Yeah, I'm so deep into this edit of Gravid right now that all the other things that I haven't wanted to write for a long time because like they're difficult and I wasn't strong enough to finish them. Now, like I know I have that strength and I want to get out there and work on them, but we have to do this instead. You know, the grass is always greener. Concept: a bunch of trans fundamentalists start a colony in the desert. It's not even 8 a.m. and I got told to fuck. So I do want you to understand that I was not telling you to fuck off, but rather the concept of just entering into like a super woke discussion about pronouns when none of us are super woke up yet. You know, I just don't want to fuck with it. But Hoggard, you're a real one, so don't take that to heart. So another thing is, we're writing in Freya's voice right now. Freya is totally an atheist. You know, absolutely 100% does not believe in God, will not believe in God for the entirety of this book. So we have to take out things like thank God and no take backs. I mean, you know, if you want to get told to fuck off, I'm happy to oblige. So that's a critical one there. Like, I think in the course of the story, like some of the other main characters will be like a little bit more open-minded. But one thing that I've noticed in my life is that people who have somebody that they really care about die. Those are the people where they get that like hardcore atheism, where they're like, no, there obviously could not be a God. And you know, shout outs to those people. Like it's kind of reasonable. You know, like that like why do good things happen to bad people? Seems like life is just a battle between good and evil. You know, shout outs to Guru. Rest in peace. But those are the people who I see getting like people who were what the fuck is in my eyes, man? Is that all right, hold on. Yeah. It's like a fucking eyelash or hair or something like that stuck in my eye, and it's driving me batshit insane in the membrane. There it is. It's fucking hair right there. So, a book where the first appearance of a character in every chapter includes their current pronouns. Uh, Freya, she, her, them, coomed bigly. Oh my god. Jesus, you could have like a really shitty book and get a publisher to bite on it just because that's so like topical, which is sad. But I don't. Yeah, so like I think I was mentioning the other day, I was at a party and I was talking to like this other writer who I think he had like a successful Kickstarter and he mostly wrote nonfiction stuff. And just listening to him talk about writing, his experience was like totally different than mine. One, he's a professional writer. Like he's writing his only source of income. It's like kind of staying at home with his cats. But two, it's just like a fucking job to him, you know. Like there was none of the magic in it. There was none of that like lust for words left when he was talking about it. And he was just talking about like the process of trying to find a new idea for a book and something to pursue, and like, and I just listened to him, and it was like, you know, listening to somebody who had, you know, dreamed of being a billionaire and grew up to be an accountant. It was fucking heartbreaking, man. And you know, a lot of the choices that I made in my writing career were not to get into that position, not taking things like writing jobs, like writing scripts for bad video games, and not writing like a lot of articles about things that I don't care about, and you know, not going for things that pay money. I'm very fortunate to have an okay day job and like a radio show to sustain me so that I can write just about the things that I really care about. And it's a privilege to be able to do this. It's a huge privilege to like have enough money and free time and like having like being able like having all this equipment and shit to stream and everything. Yeah, it's just I got it going on. Um, but so anyhow, long story short, at least Lasso was gone. Freya slumped back onto the dry side of the bed, wondering what was wrong with her. There was a sudden emptiness as it sank in that Dan hadn't really slept with her. He wasn't about to bound in from brushing his teeth and tell her it was all okay. Freya had no business dreaming about him like that. She felt like a creep. So an interesting choice here for this character to feel like she doesn't have the right to have a sexual dream about someone. That's definitely not something that ever like popped into my head while I was having like sexual dreams about people. It's been a long time, man. It's probably been 20 years since I've had a sex dream about someone. One of my favorite things ever is just from time to time, some of my exes will just like send me kind of a message out of the blue or something like that. I'd be like, hey, I just had a sex dream about you. Just letting you know. There's like a couple different women that will sometimes do that to me. And it's a huge ego boost for me. I don't know why that happens, but yeah, if you're a woman and you're having like sex dreams about a man that you haven't seen in years and years, you can really boost his ego by sending him that message. But yeah, I think it's an interesting choice for that character to feel like she's not entitled to have a dream about somebody, like a totally automatic process that she has very little say in right there. And I do think it tracks with the rest of her character, like all this guilt that she's carrying around that also has very little to do with her, and guilt she has for things that have a lot to do with her. So she knew Dan didn't see her that way. She was the one who'd initiated the hug and held it for way too long. She felt herself. She cringed at the memory. Yeah. She. Her cheeks were suddenly burning hot. But the rest of her was hot too. Mm. Yeah, see, this is like kind of our men writing women chapter right here. Let me see. Is Freya fat? No. She starts off the book wearing about 95 pounds. She's actually gaining weight in the course of this because she was kind of like at an unhealthy weight at the start of this and is slowly gaining some weight as she starts actually eating again and exercising and doing like good things there. So administrator is picturing a girl that is just slightly to moderately overweight. That's mainly because you're coming into the story much later than the paragraphs like explaining what this character is. So it's interesting though that he's picturing a girl who's like slightly overweight. And a lot of that picture is probably coming from like the very low self-esteem that you're seeing in some of her choices in this chapter, right? Like the way that like a fat girl would think like, he could never want me or whatever, because she's very insecure about her body. I'll tell you something about young women and women well into their 20s and some women into their 30s and some women into their 40s and 50s, all super insecure about their bodies, all have that like deep seed of like, I got this thing about me or whatever. I don't deserve to be loved or whatever. And I'm not sure why. Everybody's like, oh, it's the media. No, I'm pretty sure it's always been like that, and people have always been like really self-conscious, and it's just sort of baked into us. And but yeah, that's so. It's going to be hopefully something that's very relatable. Most of the intended audience for this book is women, so we're trying to key into some of that stuff, and it's also interesting for me to explore because I don't have a tremendous amount of I'm just like I'm an old man at this point. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like I've already gotten way more trim than any human being is entitled to, Like I could never get laid again, and I'd be like, okay, that's fair. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I wouldn't be happy about it. I'd probably go fucking insane after about 3 months and go on like some kind of fucked up incel rampage. But not. But anyhow, yeah, it's a like bit more of a foreign experience because like for men, people will laugh at you for being like too fat and if you got a nub dick or like missing a leg or a claw hand or something like that or all those things at once. Like people will definitely give you a hard time, but I don't feel like we ever dwell on it to the same extent. But who's for me to say? I've been pretty fortunate in that category. I'm not like a fucking Adonis or anything, but all my parts work. So shout outs to that. Mm. And I'm a bigger nigga. So anyhow, the rest of her. It wasn't only her cheeks. She was suddenly burning up. She was burning up. Her nipples were stiff. Her breasts had a deep, throbbing discomfort she sometimes got with her period, but it wasn't due for 2 weeks. She was ready to go again. What's happening to me? Freya wondered. She was sure she had a fever, but it was a slow, smoldering feeling she didn't fully want to stop. She had a sudden urge to text Dan. She had an urge to text Dan. Her phone was... Yeah, it is really a shame that there are no... As far as I know, there are no women currently watching this right here. So... I've dated like a few women where they would from time to time just get like pain in their breasts to the point where it would be really helpful for them to just like massage that out, and not even in like a sexual contest, just sometimes their tits would ache, and it wasn't like like the fat, we're like getting down to where you would have to do like a pretty serious massage and it would be helpful for them. And happy to oblige anybody who wants to get their tits rubbed, men or women. I'm an equal opportunity offender. But yeah, this is I forget which woman I was. I think there's a couple separate women that I've dated where they've really told me about having this feeling of just like sort of a deep throbbing out of nowhere where they don't really like it, and especially associated with menstruation. But anyhow, hopefully that's not too fucking bad. What's happening to me? Freya wondered. All right, so we did that. She had an urge to text Dan. Her eyes fell on her phone, face down on her nightstand. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a spot where um, theoretically we could semicolon there, but again, fuck semicolons. Okay. She was fairly sure she had a fever, but it was a slow, smoldering feeling she didn't fully want to stop. Freya She had an urge to text Dan. Her phone was face down on her nightstand. She turned it over and unlocked it. The screen was still on his last message. Good night, Freya. Freya paused. It was 4 a.m. What was she thinking? She couldn't text him now. What was she even going to say? Hey, thanks for the heart-to-heart. Want to come over and fuck? It was insane, and if she did, Dan would never talk to her again. She set her phone so hard for a moment, she was afraid she'd crack the screen. Oh, let me not do that. People are sleeping in the apartment next door to me. That was louder than I thought it would be. She wasn't like that. She hadn't even thought about him that way last night, except maybe at the very end in the driveway, when they'd hugged. It had been so long since she'd held someone, and he was so warm. Her hand snaked down her stomach at the memory. Okay, get it out of your system, Freya thought, but the feeling would not fade, even after she came again, and again after that. Everything just ran hotter. She was reaching for her phone when on impulse, she touched the star ball sitting on the nightside beside it. It was radiating heat again, like it had when she was reading Dying Inside. How is it generating that heat? It was all starting to be too much to ignore, the unusual feelings, the sleepwalking, the internet disruption, all the things she was ignoring, everything she pushed to the back of her mind. All things she was ignoring, pushing everything to the back of her mind. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because we don't have all things she was ignoring, all things she was pushing to the back of her mind. That's not a sentence, right? We what are we fucking missing there? We're missing like an object, we're missing like a verb, like all these parts of a sentence that should be there. Look at me like struggling so hard to pull. The last time I took a grammar class, I was in the fucking military, right? And even then, I hadn't paid much attention. So yeah, it's definitely time for me to do some reading there. I'll try to put some time into it today. I actually have. I can't find the other grammar book that was sent to me. Like I have 2 copies of this book, Eat, Shoots, and Leaves. One of the reasons I don't like that book is I find the author's attempts to be funny to be insufferable. Like it's a little outmoded and antiquated as a book. And so I definitely would like to have a book written with the quasi-racist sounding shock streamer in mind. But I don't know that such a book exists. So I'm going to have to read this old-fashioned book that reads like it was written by a 70-year-old woman in the 1980s, because I'm sure that's exactly how it went down. Anyhow. Again, she considered sealing the star ball back in the halves of the meteorite. Okay, again, she wondered if she ought to seal the star ball back in the meteorite shell. Better. As she thought about it, as Freya, yeah, so this is a Freya spot. As Freya thought about it, the hot feeling on her skin subsided. The star ball didn't seem so warm anymore. As soon as the feeling was gone, she wanted it back. Okay, so we just have 2 instances of feeling here. Hot sensation is like a little bit of an awkward phrase there. So let's thesaurus it up. Impression, passion, sense, consciousness, sensibility. Let's see. Let's just try feeling. Feeling, perception, pleasure, reaction, consciousness, enjoyment, reflex. No. So that's why we don't have a lot of words that fall directly. What's a step beneath unbearable? Uh, how about unrelenting? Ooh, that's actually weird. Yeah, so we've actually gone quite astray here. So it's not awful. It's not torturous. Because remember, this is like a sensation where she's kind of into the feeling of burning up. It's like a hurt so good type thing. You know what I mean? Okay. As Freya thought about it, the hot sensation on her skin subsided. The starball didn't seem so warm anymore either. The starball didn't seem so warm any longer either. Ooh. Ooh. Uh. Let's take that out. Okay. As Freya thought about it, the hot sensation on her skin subsided. As soon as the feeling was gone, she wanted it back. It left her with a heavy, aching rawness. She'd gotten off 3 times since she woke up and still felt so unsatisfied. Thoughts of sealing up the starball seemed less important by the second. When she tried to channel her thoughts back to the idea, she felt nauseous. Freya rose to her feet, ready to dash to the bathroom if she needed to throw up. It was a little better when she was standing. She finished stripping the bed, shaking her head at herself. Let me see. Oh, I like charged. Oh, I like that. Yeah. The charged sensation on her skin subsided. Perfect. Very good at it. Um, Her eyes lingered on the phone, and she was so hungry to be touched. Her eyes lingered on the phone. She was so hungry to be touched. Freya felt like she was just a humming, knotted ball of want, and nothing could sate her. She took a long, scalding shower and masturbated again twice. She tried for a third, but she was getting numb. When the sheets were in the washing machine, Freya finally trusted herself to pick up her phone again. She didn't call Dan. It wasn't to call Dan. She searched for female wet dream, then for hypersexuality. She read for a while and was relieved that at least the dream was natural, but the intensity was still worrying. The most she'd ever gotten off before was 3 times, and that was mostly to see if she could. Nothing at all like this, hitting her out of nowhere after a 6-month drought. Freya deleted her browser history and wondered if she had to tell Dr. Garboglio about this. Yeah, we need the about this. She desperately didn't want to, but what if it kept happening? What if she felt this way in class? She didn't want to be sneaking off to the bathroom. What if she felt this way at school? She didn't want to be sneaking off to the bathroom between classes to furtively masturbate, but she barely had a choice this morning. The desire was so strong. She wondered if it was even a good idea to go to school today. What's happening to me? Freya asked aloud. There was no answer from the empty house. She knelt down by her nightstand and peered at the alien orb, willing it to speak. Her distorted reflection stared back at her. The longer she stared, the more afraid she became of what it might say. So it's an interesting note there to have her kneeling by the bed there, where she's in a posture of like a I hate to, I don't want to put it as like a submissive carries like the wrong connotation there, because she's not submissive to this thing. It's not telling her what to do, but definitely somebody kneeling next to someone is not in like taking charge of the situation or whatever. It's like an interesting posture choice there. I'm with it. All right, hold on. Who dares to beg for my friendship on Discord? Yeah, it's Pilo. Pilo, I'm not going to friend you on Discord. Just putting it out there. All right, let me see. Who dares to summon me? Okay, cool. Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. Yeah, I got like a fucking message from iMessages or whatever that something hadn't sent, and I just clicked send without doing it, and I might have woken somebody up, which would be bullshit. And then I might have woken them up again by responding to a bunch of texts and everything. So I'm the worst. Yeah, not a fan of the way that I did that. I hate that shit. You know, like when you do something by accident, you're like, ah, I'm not trying to be a dick, but you were a dick. Okay, so cool. Chapter 40. I gotta tell you, chapter 40 is so much better than it used to be. And this is a chapter that's critical to get right, because we're venturing into weird territory, and more. Like when I was first getting into writing, I just like writing weird shit, and I would just toss it out there and everything. But if you want to do things that are weird, what I've learned is you have to try so much harder. Your writing has to be so much clearer when you're breaking with the reader's expectations, if you want things to get across in the right way. So yeah, it's just, you know, with great weirdness comes great responsibility to have clear writing. Otherwise, like, you know, like you're asking somebody, make this effort for me to imagine something that is abnormal and weird. Okay, cool. I'm glad I didn't wake her up. But okay, cool. So happy with how that went down. And then okay, cool. So chapter 41 is the but I don't want to go to school today thing. It was nearly dawn, and it looked like rain again. Freya could look forward to either a long bicycle. Freya could look forward to either a cold and wet bicycle ride to school or another insufferable cab ride. Neither was appealing, but staying home was no better. She would just dwell on everything that was worrying her and slowly go insane. It took a long time to get dressed. Freya kept drifting off. Mm-hmm. Freya kept drifting off as she got dressed. She found herself sitting on the edge of her bed with one sock in her hand and the other. Oh. She found herself sitting on the edge of her bed with one sock on and the other balled in her hand. She had no idea how long she'd been sitting that way. She just couldn't find the energy. She had no idea how long she'd been sitting that way. She was spent and couldn't find the energy to go on. Her eyes fell on her guitar case. She'd gotten home so late last night that there hadn't been time to practice. One more thing to feel guilty about. If you're not going to... So remember earlier where we were saying, oh, I guess, who is that? Somebody's very upset about me. Apparently I just received an award in my other channel. Somebody has said about 100 times, and the biggest faggot of the year goes to Zach ZYZ. Hundreds and hundreds of times right there. Well, I'm glad to win an award. Maybe not the award that I would have liked to win, but I'm certainly not going to be ingracious in accepting this award. Like I've got the right shirt on for it right here. Hell yeah. Proud dad. Yeah, I'm very humbled by the recognition of this award. I'll try to channel it into good things for LGBT people. So thank you very much to Mystery Awarder right there. It's been a long, hard drive, but we made it. Started at the bottom, and now we started as a bottom, and now we top. Hell yeah. So stupid. God, I love IRC. Her eyes fell on her guitar case. She'd gotten home so late last night, there hadn't been time to practice. It was one more thing to feel guilty about. Just one more thing to feel guilty about. If you're not going to bother practicing, I'm not going to bother coming. Freya would never forget the way Mr. Mathis had said that. It was like a hornet caught in her head that stung her again and again. She took the ovation out of its case, running her fingers along the edge of the fretboard, lingering on the pearl leaves. She plucked each string and listened. The G string was slightly out of tune. Yeah, I hate it when my G string is out of tune. You know what I'm saying? Riding up your crack. Which is even stupider because that's all the G string can do. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So in the chat, Dwayne said, "Why do people do that, knowing it is futile?" And then he goes on to say, "Ran out of preparation H, I suppose." Pro tip: eat fiber, not vaping chemicals. God damn, Dwayne burning up the charts over here. It's ridiculous. Oh, yeah, all are the best, really and truly. She plucked each string and listened. The G string was slightly out of tune. She turned the peg until it sounded right, then she loaded the tuner app on her phone and checked each string again. They were all spot on. She didn't really need the tuner, but Mr. Mathis had insisted she was to use one every time she picked up a guitar. It was like Randall advising her to chalk her cue before every shot. Consistency was everything. Mr. Mathis had perfect pitch as well, but he'd warned her a head cold or feeling low down could mess her up, and that she might wind up playing an entire show flat if she was careless. He didn't trust her phone. He had a battered old Korg WT-12A chromatic tuner in his case that was older than she was. Freya spent a few minutes working on the standard chord note warm-up routine she did every practice. Her fingers were stiff after all the action earlier, but she worked it out of them. Then she noodled a bit on a song she'd been trying to write, but she could tell she wasn't in the right place to find the next part of it. Next, Freya tried playing something relaxing, picking through green sleeves, but she couldn't feel the music. She was just going through the motions. Again and again she found herself drifting off, thinking about the torrid dream and messing up the notes. It was 6 a.m. and the dawn began. Sunbeams spilled through her curtains and onto hold on just a second. I too need to focus. Yggdrasil. It was 6 a.m. and the dawn began. Sunbeams spilled through her curtains onto Yggdrasil's leaves, scattering through the room. And onto Yggdrasil's leaves. Sunbeams spilled through her curtains and onto Yggdrasil's leaves. It's just Ig. The Y is an I. Sunbeams spilled through her curtains and onto Yggdrasil's leaves, scattering through the room. She walked over and parted the curtains, feeling the sunlight on her skin. Feeling the dawn on her skin. What did she really want to play? On impulse, she started to play Wild Horses, one of her favorite songs. She'd wanted to buy a 12-string so she could do the Nashville tuning for the Mick Taylor part. So Nashville tuning is where you like have a 12-string guitar and you do something where you tune down all the 2 strings in like a weird way, and it makes that like interesting sound that you hear when you listen to Wild Horses. I think, yeah, Mick Taylor was the one that played the 12-string in that recording. She wanted to buy a 12-string so she could do the Nashville tuning for the Mick Taylor part, but Mr. Mathis had told her not to get ahead of herself. He said she should learn 6-string first, then nylon, then electric before bothering with a 12-string. She couldn't get the same sound on the Ovation, of course, but she was enjoying it anyway. As the sun rose, Freya could feel the ball of tension in her chest beginning to unknot. She thought about waking up at the counter of the diner. She thought about walking up to the counter of the diner, about dying inside. She could see Dan. Mm-hmm. She thought about breakfast at the diner, summoning her courage to talk with the manager. She could see Dan, standing tense with his fist raised at Malcolm. the river flowing past them as they sat on the bench, spilling themselves out to each other. Most of all, she thought about the long embrace at the end of the night. The chords were just flowing out of the guitar. She didn't have to think. She didn't have to try. The feeling went on for the whole song, and when it was done, she sat there for a while looking out the window, watching motes of dust dancing in the sunbeams. All her sorrows fled. Nothing could cling to her in this place. Freya wiped the fingerprints off the obation with a special cloth and set it back in its case. Then she picked up the star ball and held it up to the light. The sunlight flared around it like a violet corona. The orb was warm beneath her fingertips, and okay, so I'm taking that out because, like, right in the next chapter, she throws it in a fucking locker. If she's at peace there, it doesn't make sense for her to. She felt at peace for the first time she could remember. That was all that mattered. Nice. That's actually like a big change there. Just cutting that line. Like, it was a line that, like, while I was writing it, I thought it was kind of cool because, you know, it furthers her earlier resolution to just be like, yeah, whatever. Just fucking, I don't know, control my mind. I don't give a damn. But like, that's changing in the next chapter, and she's taking like a strong action. So we need to justify that action a little bit there. Anyhow, let me see. Yeah, people trying so hard to like flood the chat to get my attention. You know, you can just fucking chat with me. It's not difficult. I will, like, anybody out there that's like mad at me, you can just message me and I'll talk with you. I won't be nice to you. Like, I'll tell you exactly why I'm mad at you. But yeah, like, the cowardly shit of trying to get other people onto your side by like flooding a chat room, I don't think that's ever worked. Not once in the history of whatever. Okay. So let's get down to, you know what I want? More. I'm going to get pizza tonight. You know, like, that's going to be my dinner will definitely be pizza. It just feels like a good night to have some crazy kind of pizza. So shout outs to pizza. I'm a big fan, and I'm going to eat some. All right, what do we got here? So Freya had finally accepted it was late fall and worn gloves. No, it sounds like she's putting on the Freya finally accepted it was late fall. Freya finally accepted it was late fall and picked out warmer gloves and a thick sweatshirt to wear under her windbreaker. Now, when she shot down the hill to River Road, the wind couldn't touch her. All the soreness in her legs from yesterday was gone, and she felt strong. She was planning to run again tonight after guitar practice. She thought the dreams might not be so vivid if she ran it out of herself. So that they're it. We're not really saying what she's saying. The first sentence about the gloves and jacket feels, yeah, like I like really still good to say something while I'm in the middle of fixing it, because it reinforces my idea that something is wrong and something needs to change. right? So that's still useful to me. Don't feel at all like awkward or that we're all laughing at you, Spathy Wall, because we're not. Real talk. Um, the smell of salt was somehow in the morning air. She could remember the dream of the rising sea as she biked up the path to. Okay, hold on. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. She hoped the dreams might not be so vivid. What's I want like a way to slyly say all the energy that she would use on masturbation. Like we don't. Um. No, I think just it is okay there. And then, like, if we think of something clever while we're editing this other passage, or if anybody in the chat has an idea right there. And she ran the excess energy out of herself. I like that a little bit better, right? Because we want to, like, now we're past the point of we're not at the point where she is quite so embarrassed about like the fucking jerk off-a-thon this morning. Um, but we still want to be like a little bit tongue in cheek about it because it's just awkward to just plop the word masturbation on every single page. It's not a good look. You know what I mean? So, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, cool. All right, so fog was rolling up the Silas River as she crossed the bridge. It smelled of salt. For a moment she was thrust back into the dream of the impossible causeway, the sea rising and chasing her up the path to Grayson. The dark sea that had swallowed everything. Mm-hmm. The new sea that had swallowed everything. New sea sounds like newsy. What do we got right here? Mm. Yeah, how many ounces? See, my problem is that these coffees, good though they are, only about 9 ounces of coffee. I need about 9 inches and about 20 ounces. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, but when I went out to get coffee this morning, the place was closed, which is like a little bit of a heartbreaker. Uh, oh, shout out to Dwayne for getting new glasses there. Glasses are amazing. Just imagine like before we like figured out glasses, you would get to be like, I don't know, 30 years old, and then suddenly half of people can't see jack shit 20 feet away from them. Just like caught in this fog of blindness or whatever. We really live in an amazing fucking time, man. Like I got my eyes zapped not long ago, and right now I'm reading 12-point text on a monitor that is 15 feet away from me. That's incredible. I love that. Let me see. I also prefer to order my beverages by the like I want to like order like a giant boot of beer, and that's why I'm banned from most coffee shops near me. It's like, yeah, give me 3 fingers of coffee, but you're really banned from coffee. Yeah, man, coffee shops. Although I haven't been to the coffee shop that I usually go to in a month, and they must think I'm dead because I would literally be there every day. I'm just gonna show up like the prodigal son at the end of this edit and be like, "What's up, motherfuckers?" Also, some morning, if we want to, I can just take a laptop and work on this at the coffee shop, and like I feel like that would be cool one morning or another. But it wouldn't be like this cool setup. You would just see me in like a little tiny block, and definitely the audio would be worse. We'd use a different set of microphones and so forth. So I might set that up because I'm feeling, eventually we'll get bored of doing this every day, and it is a little harder on my eyes to have this lighting or whatever there. So yeah, this is a better paragraph, right? Really, we didn't do a good. Actually, hold on just a second. Let's think about this shit. Oh, okay, yeah, this is why. So this really should sort of be those 3 pages. They're not quite 3 pages, right? The threshold at which I won't make something another. I think a chapter needs to be at least 3 pages long. So that's where we're doing this the 3 dots and just like a page break rather than oh wow, that looked like it was not yeah, it didn't look centered to me, but it's because I'm like tilted over to the side of that. Tuck one of my arms into my jacket the next time I go there. Yeah, like walk in with like a cane and a fucking eye patch, and then miraculously heal myself. Okay, so that's good. We fixed that. That's better. Fog was rolling up the Silas River as she crossed the Thoreau Bridge. It smelled of salt. For a moment, Freya was thrust back into the dream of the impossible causeway. The dark new sea that had swallowed everything. She pedaled faster, trying to get ahead of the feeling, and she was sweating as she made it to the teacher parking lot that had slothed off into the imaginary sea. Mm-hmm. The rising water that had swallowed everything. She pedaled faster, trying to get ahead of the feeling, and she was sweating as she made it into the parking lot that had sloughed off into the dream sea. There were three long. It felt solid enough this morning, but she was still glad to get past it. I like that. That just that little note, like that like, ooh, the floor is lava feeling. There's just so many times where you'll have like this like little weird superstitious feeling where something is not a certain way, but you're still kind of relieved when it's done anyway. And really when a character is like caught on this periphery between waking and dreaming, between is this real, is this not real, it's a time to reflect on things like that, and just how like kind of tenuous our grasp on what's real can sometimes be. I mean, it's like such a huge overused trope. What's real and what's not real, playa. But I don't know. It's still kind of fun. I'm having a good time with it. Let's take a look at the rest of all this. The halls were nearly empty. Not many people had arrived yet. The few teachers who saw Freya only nodded at her and sipped their coffee. They hadn't summoned the energy to speak yet. Right? And we actually went back and like 3 separate times as I was editing, I didn't use the word summoned just so I could use it here. Because that's where I want to use it. Cool. Inside Grayson, the halls were nearly empty. Not many people had arrived yet. The few teachers who saw Freya only nodded at her and sipped their coffee. They hadn't summoned the energy to speak yet. Freya could relate. She hadn't slept nearly enough. Bits of dream kept tugging at her. Tendrils writhing in the river. Fragments of dream kept digging into her, tendrils writhing in the river, black water cascading down the auditorium steps. Nothing faded anymore. She tried to put the frantic morning behind her, but it was impossible to forget. She was still a little tender with every step she took. She'd never felt that way before. Uh, how the fuck do you even say this? I'm not gonna use this word. Uh, but I want to concupiscent, concupiscent. Oh, concupiscent with Cupid, scent. Okay. Concupiscence. What is the biblical meaning of concupiscence? Concupiscence. Concupiscent. Yeah, concupiscent. I would love to be able to use concupiscent, but because it's not a word that's in my everyday lexicon, libidinous, stimulated is kind of impassioned. Ooh, ardent. I don't think a woman, like a girl, would describe herself as ardent. What we're really looking for is something like animated. So here we have like kind of like an interesting double meaning right here, right? Where she's still a little tender with every step she took. She never felt so inflamed before. Like there the meaning is like both like the skin around her genitals is inflamed because she spent like all morning jacking off. But also we can let's go with that. That gets into like a little bit of like too much territory, IMO. I do like the double meaning though. I think that's like one where an editor will like be like, kill that darling right there. No, well, like she's definitely sore from just friction. You know what I mean? But the inflamed can also mean like she was inflamed with passion for herself as she's masturbating furiously. So I like that double meaning enough that I'm going to slip it in there, even though my gut tells me that it's wrong. But we're going to keep it. Maybe somebody will fucking snicker as they're reading it. I think it's a little funny. The way she'd felt playing guitar was new too. Was that what she'd been practicing towards for so many years? To feel effortless? She worried she might never recapture it, that she'd spend everything in a moment no one else would ever hear. Freya stashed her coat and gloves in her locker, returning the algebra and world history book she'd needed for homework over the weekend. So I remember earlier we wanted to have sort of like her syllabus or whatever there. Like a more organized writer would have all this shit in like one document, like a style guide that they could refer to. And he would have stuff like, these are her periods, like this is her schedule every week. These are the things that go on there. It would be somewhat smart for me to establish this, but I don't wanna, you know what I mean? So feel free to start a wiki if you want to, but I'm a little too lazy to do that level of organization. It would definitely be useful, but I'm not. It ain't in me to be that kind of person. You know what I mean? You got to go with your strengths. Mm-hmm. Returning the algebra and world history books she'd needed over the weekend. She'd needed for homework over the weekend. So here, I think she's in trig, honestly. Yeah, she's in trig. The trigonometry. So what are they? I think that you take algebra is what you take when you're a freshman, and then geometry is what you take when you're a you take algebra, then geometry, then algebra 2 trig, then calculus, right? If you're like on an AP path. I think I'm not a math person. I school, like I was thrown out of high school and just never really saw a reason to take a math course again. Um, but it's definitely one of those things that I'll revisit. Like just if we're going to pie in the Skyland, um, the dream here is that uh, this book succeeds really well, or something else that I do succeeds really well, and I get to the point where I can work on these things full time. But as I'm working on these things full time, that's not quite enough to like occupy everything that's going on here. And I need structure in my life. So my plan, if I should ever become like relatively successful at streaming, which might not happen, is to take the time that I spend going to work right now. And actually, I never really got to go to college in a meaningful way. And I would like to go back to college in like absolutely the most sitcom possible way. Like I would go stay at a fucking dorm or something like that if it were possible to do that, and literally just be the most awful fucking oh my god. Because I'm an old man, I have no business being in a dorm, but I look so young relatively. I could easily fucking pass and fool some of these people. But we only have a few years left where I can get away with that. Like once I start going bald or my hair all goes gray, or I burst into flames for my continual blasphemy, we can no longer do that. But that's definitely a gimmick that I would like to play, and just be like the biggest jackass of all time. Dick's getting hard just thinking about it. We should do that. It's a shame that we've lost all of our millionaire benefactors, because I think me documenting that process would be hilarious. It would just be so awkward and awful. Let's see. Then she picked up her English. Then she picked up the English literature and earth science books she'd need for first and second period. She closed up her locker and glanced around the hall, afraid someone might have snuck up on her. There was something unsettled and unspoken in the air, but she couldn't quite place it. It was probably just lack of sleep. In her backpack was the Void Captain's tale. She thought about, when was the last time we said Freya? Freya up there. Freya had the Void Captain's tale in her backpack. So, by the way, I will never put a book into one of my books, like the name of an actual book, unless I think it is awesome, and then you should probably read it. So definitely any book that you see mentioned in here, I think is cool enough that it's worth reading. Like Norman Spinrad just really has some dope shit out there. She thought about heading to her favorite corner in the library to read until first period, but she decided to sit on the benches instead. Another question: do like, I don't know if high schools in the U.S. still have homeroom. I can't remember when we stopped fucking doing it. We definitely, like, I went to some high schools where they didn't have that any longer. So I don't know what that's all about. Why do they even have like a fucking homeroom? I think it's just so that all the kids that are perpetually late can show up. So first period should not be capitalized. Hold up. Ooh, good God. Today, she decided to sit on the benches inside the main entrance instead. She hoped someone from the party last night would see her as they arrived and chat with her. That impact... So I like this metaphor right here. And in fact, like any chance that we have to use a space metaphor is cool, and I like the idea of that strange orbit. But she hoped someone from the party last night would see her as they arrived and chat with her. Maybe that impact might be enough to... Maybe that impact would be enough to knock her out of this strange orbit. Really like that line. Hopefully it doesn't like break suspension for readers or whatever there, because it's one that I really would like to not discard. But what do we got here? The urge to talk with others was novel, something that had been absent for a long time. The urge to talk with others was novel, something that had been absent from Freya for a long time. Of course, she was really hoping to see him, and she couldn't help but smile at the thought. It won't last. She couldn't help but smile at the idea. It won't last. The thought struck like an intruder kicking in a door, and she knew at once it was true. What business did she have, smiling like an idiot at nothing in a hallway, perching on a bench, hoping to catch a glimpse of a boy who only felt sorry for her? It hadn't even been a year, and here she was thinking about hooking up like nothing had happened, lusting after the exact same thing she'd thrown in Lassa's face, the very thing she'd driven her away with. We don't need that. Freya had been pushing Lassa out of her mind for days, and now she was here, demanding attention. So yeah, now she was here makes it seem like Lassa is actually there presently, so we need to fix that. Freya had been pushing Lassa out of her mind. Oh. Now Lassa was center stage, demanding her attention. What if she never came back? What if she killed herself out there in the woods? It would all be on Freya, her ugly words, her feeble apology. She would never escape. She would never escape the guilt. Mm-hmm. The bottom fell out. Freya didn't want to be on this bench or even hidden away in the library. She didn't want to be here at all. She wished there was a button to erase herself, a delete key for her entire life. All the crushing weight came back at once. All the weight came back at once, and it was so much worse for its absence. Her vision narrowed. Everything was closing in. She set her book on the bench. Yeah, why on earth am I just congested out of nowhere? Like feeling totally fucking fine. And then my nose is like, shh, get some histamines up in there. Fucking, we need mucus, stat. Like, the fuck nose. That's one of my least favorite things about being a human. The mortality is kind of shitty too, but having that stuffy nose, whoa, it's the worst. Real talk. Freya set her book on the bench. Freya set her book on the bench and reached into her pocket for the star ball. She needed something to hold on to. When her fingers brushed against the sphere, the heaviness felt less crushing. The tightness relaxed. She removed her hand from her pocket, and the feeling began to creep back in. It's doing something to me, Freya thought. It wasn't a realization, more of an acknowledgement, something she couldn't ignore any longer. The star ball was changing her. She took it out and held it in her palm. The star ball was hot. Okay, so this is adding in. Remember, we didn't used to have that chapter about the star ball being snatched away from her, which is an important plot point, and we want to harp on it from time to time. So, it's doing something to me, Freya thought. It wasn't a realization, more of an acknowledgement, something she couldn't ignore any longer. The star ball was changing her. She took it out and held it in her palm, feeling a glimmer of worry someone might snatch it from her again. The star ball was hot. It had to expend energy to do this. There was an unformed urge running underneath her thoughts. There was an unformed urge running underneath her conscious thought. She kept her mind blank. Freya kept her mind blank, trying to keep it from fully emerging. The awful feeling was retreating as she held the sphere. Serenity was taking hold. She knew once it did, the unformed thought would die. Freya began doing the 7-breath exercise from the Fragile Phoenix. I think we have described this, this exercise. In fact, okay, so we made a note there that there are several references to breathing exercises in Chapter 2 of the Fragile Phoenix. It might be helpful to give each technique a name on some Naruto type shit. And I think that's the kind of thing that that might work for some of our readers are going to be younger, maybe like too young for Naruto, but the things are wait, hold on. Apparently, Saddam Hussein is alive. That guy does look like Saddam. Well, didn't he have a bunch of fucking lookalikes running around there, getting plastic surgery and so forth? Oh, by the way, like I'm really hoping to finish this book before World War III. So that's where we're gonna power through as much of this as we can. Freya began performing the 7-breath exercise. The 7-breath exercise from the Fragile Phoenix. Freya began, so we'll just start on that. Freya began performing the broken breath exercise from the Fragile Phoenix. As soon as a thought sprang up, she imagined it breaking apart into pieces. Then the fragments would tumble down into She visualized the fragments tumbling down and then reforming into another thought she shattered with her breath, on and on like a wheel in her mind. She left her book and backpack behind, feeling pangs of alarm in her stomach as she walked down the hall. As she began entering the combination to her lock, a bolt of nausea struck her, but she was ready for it. She got the locker open and shoved her fist inside of it with the star ball clutched in her palm. Her fingers would not unlock. With her other hand, she reached inside and pried her fingers apart. With her other hand, she reached inside and pried the fist open. The star ball clacked against the metal shelf and rolled to the back of the locker, rattling against the wire of a spiral-bound notebook. Freya shut the locker door. Okay, so good changes to that paragraph, but let's read through it to make sure that they are good changes. Freya began performing the broken breath exercise from the fragile phoenix. As soon as a thought sprang up, she imagined it breaking apart into pieces. She visualized the fragments tumbling down and then reforming into another thought. She visualized the fragments She visualized the fragments tumbling down. Okay, so Freya began performing the broken breath exercise from the fragile phoenix. As soon as a thought sprang up, she imagined. As soon as a thought sprang up, she exhaled and imagined her breath breaking it apart into tiny pieces. As she inhaled, she visualized the fragments tumbling down and then reforming into another thought she could shatter with. With her breath, with her, she would breathe out and shatter it. The cycle went on and on in her mind, turning like a wheel until she felt vacant. She left her book and backpack behind and walked down the hall, feeling pangs in her stomach with every step. As she began entering the combination to her lock, a bolt of nausea struck, but she was ready for it. She got the locker open and shoved her fist inside, with the star ball clutched in her palm. She tried to let go, but she couldn't release. Her fingers would not unlock. With her other hand, she reached inside and pried her fist open. The star ball clacked against the metal shelf and then rolled to the back of the locker, rattling against the wire spine of a spiral-bound notebook. Freya clapped the locker shut, and all the panic she'd been pushing back rushed in. Whew, this is a neat fucking chapter. Really enjoy that whole thing. Oh, yeah, fucking loving it. As she turned the dial to her, as she turned the dial of her lock, a bolt of nausea struck. As Freya turned the dial of her lock, a bolt of nausea struck, but she was ready for it. She got the locker open and shoved her fist inside with the star ball clutched in her palm. She tried to let go, but she couldn't release. Her fingers would not unlock. With her other hand, she reached in and pried her fist open. Look at her, like, double fisting her locker. Hold on, what was that like? Ah! Okay. Oh, she looks so stupid. The star ball clacked against the metal shelf and rolled to the back of the locker, rattling against the wire spine of a spiral-bound notebook. Freya clapped the locker door shut, and all the panic she'd been pushing back rushed in. The star ball was trying to control her. It was inside of her head somehow. She could remember the sudden headache and stomach pain when she thought of booking. That sudden headache and stomach pain when she thought of booking a trip to Paris. The nausea she'd felt. That was all control. The sudden, uh, all of it was control. All the things she'd pushed out of her mind, the inexplicable heat, the bead of blood. Had it put something inside of her? Her steps were faltering. Her steps were faltering as she moved away from the locker, returning to the bench where her book bag was. Her steps were unsteady as she moved away from the locker, returning to the bench. She clasped the lock. Freya's steps were unsteady as she returned to the bench where she Now she really had to tell someone about this. Her hand shook as she stuffed the Void Captain's tail into the front pocket of her backpack. Mm-hmm. Her hands were trembling. She fumbled with the zipper as she stuffed. She fumbled with the zipper as she stuffed the Void Captain's tail back into her backpack. Her hands were trembling. Now she really had to tell someone about this. It was all about to get so much worse. Mm-hmm. All right. Deep breath. Stretch. Let it all out. Do the broken breath exercise, y'all. Freya had the keen feeling she was missing something. Keen feeling she was missing something. The starball had occupied more than space in her pocket. How much of what had happened since the night at the river had been her, and how much had been the alien? The word sunk in deep. Alien. It was an alien intelligence. She'd seen it beneath the microscope. She'd carried the starball in her pocket like her favorite Aggie and ignored every single warning. She'd missed 100 chances to tell someone else. The thoughts went on, screaming in her mind as her pulse pounded in her ears. Mm-hmm. Mm. With muted dread, Freya, as the drumming faded, indifferent fog was rolling in to take its place. With muted dread, Freya could feel the obliviating weight, the burden that had ground everything inside of her to powder. Everything that had happened. The burden that had ground her insides to powder. Everything that had happened since the river had been just an illusion. Mm-hmm. Ooh. It was a rough timing for this young woman. Freya had a keen feeling she was missing something. The starball had occupied more than space in her pocket. How much of what had happened since the night at the river had been her, and how much had been the alien? The words sunk in deep. Alien. It was an alien intelligence. The starball was an alien. She'd carry the orb in her pocket like her favorite Aggie and ignored every single warning. She'd missed 100 chances to tell someone else. The thoughts went on, screaming in her mind as her pulse pounded in her ears. As the drumming faded, indifferent fog was rolling in to take its place. With muted dread, Freya could feel the obliviating weight, the burden that had ground her side. Ooh. The burden that would grind her insides to powder. Everything that had happened since the river had been an illusion. Now she was seeing things as they were. She needed to get off this bench and away from this place. People would start to arrive. They would try to talk to her, and she knew she could not speak. She knew she would be unable to respond. She had a clawing feeling in her chest like she'd swallowed something jagged. Get up, get up, get up. Get up, get up, get up. Stand up for your rights. I want more coffee, but I think another one would be too much. What we'll probably do, what I'm going to do at the end of this chapter is I'm going to get up and get like a small cup of coffee from a bodega. Yeah, just a small coffee with some milk, I think would be the way to go right here. So I'll just play the fucking intro again as I set off on a quest for coffee. Wait, where are my pants? Oh, my pants are upstairs. Yeah, maybe we'll pause at the end of this chapter, although I do want to edit another chapter. She needed to get off this bench and away from this place. People would start to arrive soon. They would try to talk with her. So yeah, I'm wondering. So we have this tendency as we're editing to start the paragraph with Freya, and then just use pronouns for the whole thing, and it's kind of like naturally forming into like a style or whatever. I don't know if that's correct. I tell you, I would love it if we got this stream like large enough that a few people who are like actual editors started wading in on this thing, because holy shit, just a little bit of professional tender loving care could go a long way here. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think I've made up my mind that I'm actually going to go upstairs, put on pants, go get like a small coffee and I don't know, like a fucking cruller or something like that. And then we'll continue. I shouldn't fucking eat the cruller. 219 boys. No cruller, just coffee. And I'll make like a steak and eggs later. Get up, get up, get up. She couldn't move. All the willpower. Freya couldn't move. All the willpower she thought she had, all the miles she'd run and the chances she'd taken. It was all on loan. Mm. This is a serious run-on sentence right here. Freya couldn't move. All the willpower she'd thought she had, all the miles she'd run and the chances she'd taken, it was all on loan and the interest had come due. Yeah, so the problem is too, like our tenses are fucking it's not pluralized, right? It should be they were all on loan, but that doesn't all the willpower she thought she had was on loan. Oh, that's better. Yeah. All those miles she'd run and the chances she'd taken weren't hers. The willpower she'd thought she had was on loan, and the interest had come due. Locked to the bench, she shut her eyes tightly. Mm-hmm. They each noticed Freya and scoured her with their gazes. They saw a loser, the crazy girl with the dead dad who had lain in the rain. She finally managed to stand. Mm-hmm. She needed to go home right away. Oh, hey, Freya, a voice piped behind her, dripping acid. It was Jane Yang. So I think it's cliche as fuck to say dripping acid. Um, I want to fix that. Snide and familiar. It was Jane Yang. Freya had to escape. She couldn't possibly deal with Jane right now. It was Jane Yang. Freya had to escape her. She couldn't possibly deal with Jane Yang right now. She couldn't possibly deal right now. Her legs refused to sprint. Mm-hmm. What do we got there? Sometimes people love a cliche. I don't love a cliche. That just feels fucking easy to me. And like I don't think like the thing about a cliche is it was like a device that was effective once. Like people would visualize and be like, "Ooh, it's dripping with acid," right? And you can, like you kind of force the reader to see that, but it's not right there. You know what I mean? Let's try this again. A voice piped behind her, snide and familiar. A voice piped behind her, dripping with acid. It doesn't feel right. All right, let's not dwell on it. We're about halfway through this chapter. A voice pipe behind her. So administrator thinks it sounds better dripping with acid. I think we're like a little biased by the fact that we like to do acid. Um, oh yeah, so we were trying to. Oh, holy shit! Is that Time Cop right there? The original, the Grand Poobah, president for life of the GNAA, Time Cop himself, up in the stream. Shout out to Time Cop right there. Yeah, Time Cop, we're deep into this motherfucker. We're at like almost at page 300 editing this guy. I'm going to finish this chapter and then stop for like a coffee break. Also, just FYI, Time Cop, there is a non-zero chance that I will be in Japan at some point this summer for like 2 or 3 weeks. So if you ever wanted to meet Load Ray Dio IRL, or if you never want to meet Load Ray Dio IRL, that's your chance. But shout out to Big Time Cop right there. He's a fucking real one. He's probably right now constructing a fleet of attack drones to just get revenge for Iran. And shout outs to him for doing his duty to take down the great Satan. Real talk. All right, what do we got here? A familiar voice called out behind Freya, and she winced when she recognized it. It was Jane Yang. Freya had to escape her. She couldn't possibly deal right now. She tried to run, but her legs refused. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. They would only plod one foot in front of the other. Moving in the wrong direction. What's wrong with you? Jane asked. Can't even look at me, huh? Freya felt like her feet were mired in concrete. So yeah, we're really. I think we can take out this. Cool. Other people were looking at them because we already went into detail on how she feels like she's caught in quicksand. Uh, oh shit. So absolutely, please keep me updated. I'll book ticks just to come and chat. Yeah, I think we're gonna be in Tokyo for like the first part of it there. But if shit works out, we'll have a house in Tokyo, and we want to venture north for a little bit. So I'll try and do something that is like convenient with your schedule. I know you got a lot of shit going on there, but this is not set in stone, and it's very contingent on getting like a free house to stay out there. If I don't get the free house, you know, it's expensive to go to old Japan. But yeah, I've never been before, and I really want to check it out. My main thing is I want to go along Western Japan and just like the like sort of coastal highways and shit over there, and go to a bunch of old Buddhist temples, and so that I can desecrate the relics of the Buddha that are there. It's just, you know, the only thing that gets me off these days. But how you been? I have not heard Time Cap chat in a very long time. So shout outs to him. He's a real one right there. Yeah, you should definitely lurk in LRH on an alias. Just to keep, it's like incredible drama going on 24/7. It's fantastic. Other people were looking at them. She needed to tell Jane to fuck off. All right, what do we got there? It was just in your LRH this morning. Yeah, like I don't know if you could see the people like flooding hundreds of lines about how I was like the number one faggot in America or whatever. But oh, love it. It never gets old. Yeah, somebody in the chat the other day, last night actually, was asking if there was still a chat room for the GNAA. I guess a bunch of people were on like a Telegram group or something like that. But I like logged onto that and I was like, I'm never gonna go on Telegram. You know, it's just, you know, you gotta install like a program and everything. I'm an IRC user. But you know, I expect people to be on Discord. So I don't know. I don't know why they're not just on Discord. But anyhow, it's probably some open source justification for all this shit right there. Well, shout out to Tom Cobb. Like, makes me happy to see you. Really and truly. Not even trolling or whatever. I'm glad you're doing well. Or I hope you're doing well. I don't know what the fuck's going on with you. But I assume it's doing well. What's wrong with you? Jane asked, darting around in front of Freya. She had an ugly look on her face. Can't even look at me, huh? Other people were looking at them. Freya needed to tell Jane to fuck off and leave her alone, but she couldn't. She couldn't make the words. You ruined everything for me, Jane accused. You ruined everything for me, Jane accused, jabbing 2 fingers in her face. You knew I was into him, so he turned everyone against me. Did you at least get a pity fuck out of it? Jane's voice had risen to a near shout, and more people were attracted to the commotion. Freya could only shake her head and keep moving. Don't walk away from me. I'm talking to you, Jane was howling, and a whole group of people were moving along with them, anxious to see a fight. Look at me! Jane moved into Freya's way, and when Freya tried to step around, she sidestepped in front of her again. Freya stared at her. Freya stopped and stared at her. She knew there were ways to fix this, words she could say to diffuse the situation, but there was no traction. Everything was sinking into the mire. Okay, I wanted to have into the mire in this sentence, but we had used it previously, and it was a little overmuch. Similarly, we had to take out the word summoned, because, like, there are some words where you just have a budget for certain bullshit words, and if you use them too frequently, like, the reader will start to see a pattern, and it's like, oh, he's saying obsequious again. I'm starting to, you know, we're ultimately, human beings are like pattern recognition engines. And if somebody is recognizing a pattern in your writing, they're getting bored and like they feel like they know what's going to happen. So you definitely, you don't want people to be doing that pattern recognition shit whilst you're working on things. So yeah, that's my idea. Freya stopped and stared at her. She knew there were ways to fix this. Words she could say to diffuse the situation, but there was no traction. Everything was sinking into the mire. Spot on. So Bob, what in the world did he get banned from? I don't know why he caught that. It's just like a 10-second mute. I think we got a bunch of words. Oh, I think you caught that for the word anal because Nightbot is just stupid. But spot on analysis, word economy is so important. I mean, it's a little bit disingenuous for me to talk about word economy, though. This book is 200,000 words right now. What have we done to the earth? I can't even find the word count because it's like hidden somewhere at the bottom. Oh, you know what it is? It's when we have the HDMI hooked up. It cuts off. It like basically crops the screen a little bit, and the word count is hidden at the bottom of that. So I might be able to find that at some point. Jane was working herself up, shouting more abuse, but Freya couldn't even understand the words. All she could see was the girl who cried. All she could see was the girl who'd cried and cried at the notebook. The girl who had once been one of the flock, who'd been so terrified to bring home a C her first semester of 8th grade English. Freya looked at all the faces that had gathered around them. One of the flock who'd been so terrified to bring home. The girl who'd been so terrified to bring home a C from her first semester of 8th grade English she threw up in Lasse's car on the way home. Freya looked from Jane to all the faces that had gathered around them. There was no sympathy, only hunger, eagerness to see them tear each other apart. Freya just wanted to let them lie down again and let them cover her with earth. So it's kind of weird to have cover her with earth out of nowhere right there. Um, Freya just wanted to lie down again and let them trample her. That's even more fucked up than cover her with earth and like much more appropriate in the situation. That's a fucked up thought right there. That is not how most people think. Nobody's just like, just fucking walk all over me. I'm done. Ooh. 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 Oh, something weirded me out there. Oh, so I see caliphrase right there, and I can't tell if caliphrase is Spanish or French, or maybe like it's Belgian or something weird like that. It's like a weird name. What is a caliphrase? Caliphrase. So I see an Instagram over here, and there's Coco Aliphrase, but it seems like it's just a name. Caliphrase is a kumquat spirit right here. Are you serious? Yeah, it's like a kumquat gin. Oh, that's kind of neat. Um, does it mean kumquat gin? I have no idea. But anyhow, I still think that's kind of cool. Hold on, what do we got here? Caliphrase. Oh, it's just a random name. All right, well, anyhow, welcome to the stream right there. Yeah, not a lot of people join us on D Live. But yeah, basically, this is a novel editing stream. And I've been, for the last 30 days, editing this science fiction novel about a young woman who tries to kill herself and winds up finding an alien probe. And it's all starting to get real weird here. So, yeah, man. Name's Zach ZYZ. And this is my 8th book. From time to time, you'll see scrolling in the chat the website for the stream and everything. So yeah, feel free to check it out there. I should really add that to like all the D Live channels and whatnot. So Spaethiwa was hoping all this sexy chapter editing had summoned the spirit of come. Oh, it's weird. I don't really know where you're going there. All right, let's get through this chapter, and then I really need to get more coffee. Freya could see. Freya just wanted to lie down and let them trample her. She saw a familiar face through the haze and felt relieved. Here was someone who could understand. Radomir was on the border of the crowd, trying to figure out what was happening. When he recognized Freya, he slipped through it. When he recognized Freya, he slipped through the crowd to the front. Radomir's eyes met Freya's, and it gave her the strength to speak. Leave me alone, Freya said to Jane. But the words were just empty wind. They had no force. I will. Everyone will. No one wants you around. Everyone just feels sorry for you. Why don't you just get it over with? Fucking kill yourself. The crowd erupted with gasps and oohs of delight. Mm-hmm. Mm. It was a kumquat joke. Oh, there we go. The spirit of God. Oh, that's so labored. Oh, I didn't get that at all. Kumquat. Oh, oh. Especially while, yeah, it does seem like you've got like almost 2 minutes of lag somehow. It should only be about 30 seconds. Um, but yeah, I don't know what's happening there. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. So actually, if she's standing like this, it would be actually pretty hard to knock her to the ground. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always misspell surprise. It's like a word that I just can't fucking spell for whatever reason. This has been for some decades. I'm pretty sure if you look at IRC chat logs from the year 2003, I still haven't gotten that right. She feel backward. Mm. It caught Jane by surprise. She fell backward and landed flat on her ass. No one caught her. Idiot. Do not speak, Radomir said, standing over her and ready. Looking ready to hit her again. Okay, so when I say palm and a blade, I'm like, ready to hit her again. Everyone found their voices at once, and there was chaos. Two boys rushed forward and grabbed Radomir's on. In a second, he was going to get beaten up. Jane was on the ground, holding her face and looking shocked. She started to cry as an adult voice. She started to cry as a yeah, I do think so. Somebody gave a note earlier about like having it be a teacher's voice rather than an adult's voice. And I think we're just gonna go with that. She started to cry as the teacher's voice shouted for them to break it up. She started to cry as the teacher's voice shouted to break it up. It was Mrs. Struthers. She was nearly 70 years old, but her voice cut through the confusion. What in the world is going on here? She asked. He hit me, Jane cried, and voices echoed agreement. I struck her. I will take the punishment, Radomir said. Maybe commotion better there. Oh, yeah. It's not confusion. Yeah, because it's not confusion at that point. It's commotion. People know what's going on. Someone finally helped Jane up. She was sobbing now. Why on earth did you do that? Mrs. Struthers asked, and a dozen voices were clamoring to answer her at once. Pipe down. I'm not asking you, she addressed the mob. She pointed at Radomir. She said stupid things that cannot be allowed. Let go of me. I will not fight, Radomir said. Mm-hmm. Well, let's all go to the office. What a dumb way to start the week, Mrs. Struthers said, shaking her head. You too, Miss Jokla. For a moment, Freya didn't understand her. She was caught in the fog. When it got through, she lowered her head and followed them to Mr. Evers' office. And then chapter 42, Starball, is pointed at. Okay, cool. All right, so that's a cool chapter right there. I feel enough energy, thanks to this NAD right here. No, it's just like it's an exciting part of the story. And I want to see what happens next, because the nice thing about this is I waited long enough. I've forgotten a lot of the shit that happens in this story. So I'm like excited to find out what's up next. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dog out here. Whoop. Uh, okay, I'm going to go get some coffee, and I'll be back in like 5-10 minutes. And during the time, I'm going to go ahead and play that intro one more time, just so you can check it out if you haven't seen it. Let's see what we got there. Da, 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 da. Spilling some tar on sugar cubes and time lapsing the whole thing. Wild. So the intro looks like the ending of a Doom level, except backwards. Hell yeah. Oh, I remember that that like wipe effect that they had there. It's fucking wild. All right. So fancy scientician is about to rail some lines of Starball. I want fucking royalties if Starball becomes a drug at the end of this whole fucking thing. All right, let me see what we can get there. So yeah, we're closing in on that magic page 300 mark right there. Also the equally magic chapter 50 mark. So looking forward to both of those. So that's chapter 41 right there. Let me just make sure that the chapter numbers are right at this point. So I feel pretty good about the Jane Yang scene right there. Oh, one thing that I wanted to potentially add was her being afraid of Malcolm. Yeah. Let's see if there's a spot where I can shoehorn him in. Spaithiwa on a rum and coke right now. God, I kind of wish I... Actually, tonight I'm going to go out drinking with my girl. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go off of the Bitcoin Brazilianaire or whatever. I'm just having like some negative effects from that old keto. So I might just do like more caloric restriction and like just edge like a little bit more into getting some more exercise than trying to go like full keto all week. Maybe just do it for like a few days. When it mentioned flat Earth in the book, huh? Yeah. Well, this is a hard science fiction novel, so I'm not sure that I'll really, I'll really win anybody over with that. Yeah. So I was thinking she can take the uh, oh yeah, so there's nowhere to fit in Malcolm right there. Like we do not have the bandwidth right there. It'd be a good place for it. Okay, cool. Yeah, we just that's all we need. We just need to this character exists, right? Yeah. So there, and all the okay, cool. There's also the point where the air is unsettled or something like that. Yeah. I wonder, do we need to mention them twice there? Something unsettling in the air. No, it's fucking bad. Yeah, it's just yeah, my shirt does say proud dad with a rainbow. And it's not because I am a proud leather dad. I'm not even like much of a homosexual. It's just back in the day when I used to play this game called The Grid in New Orleans at the Penny Arcade, just off of not too far from Canal Street. My gamer tag was gay dad. And let me see. Wait, who's anti-Semitic in here? Are any of the characters in your book a tad anti-Semitic? Um, I don't think anybody calls anybody a Jew nose at any point in this entire book. I don't think that there's any anti-Semitism outside of there's an implication a few chapters before where the that Israeli agents are spying on this company, but they're just joking around. Um, I'm an operator in Gay Dads for Sons on EFNet. Did I once have a black Chevy S10? Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have all manner of things. Real talk. Yeah, in fact, every week I try to give away amazing articles that fall into my possession, but I'm seldom successful. Anyhow, the star ball was hot. Shout, shout. Well, get all that. Okay, cool. I feel like we did our job there. Just like bringing up this character exists for a little bit because we want more. We want to show more that she's worried about him, right? He needs to be more of an omnipresent threat because really there isn't like another strong antagonist in this entire book. Radimir's on the board. I like the way that this all goes right here. And so we're gonna get into chapter 43. Oh god, fucking cursors. I'm spinning. So there's chapter number 43, and I can feel at this point that like my mana is somewhat depleted. How long have we been editing? We haven't even been editing that long. This stream is like less than 2 hours, but it's just I didn't get on nights where we do the other show. I'll only get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, so I won't have quite so much in me. So let's see how long this chapter is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Let's see what we can do. I don't want to just rehash previous chapters, and we do have to get through the book. I'm so sorry. That should all be italicized. I'm so sorry, Jane sobbed. She was an absolute mess. She'd cried her face into a blotchy watercolor of smeared eyeliner and washed out foundation. So I definitely want a woman to what Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator. It's on Steam. No, I've never played a dad dating simulator. I can't remember if that game was marketed at gay men or straight men, or at straight women, or at trans individuals who are gender, like dripping gender fluid. Ugh. Mhm. Okay, so that's a new paragraph. I'm so sorry, Jane sobbed. She was an absolute mess. She cried her face into. Oh, she was an absolute mess. She'd cried her face into a blotchy watercolor of smeared eyeliner and washed out foundation. They were all sitting in the four uncomfortable chairs facing each other. Radomir was at Freya's left, Jane was at her right, and Mr. Evers sat across from all of them. Radomir was silent and pitiless. He glowered at Jane like a grim idol carved from stone. I think like a grim idol carved from... That's a little bit much. What do y'all think? Um, let's see. He glowered at Jane like an idol carved from stone. I like that better. Freya shrugged at the apology. Jane had been so sorry last night, too. This is not how I wanted to start my week, Mr. Evers cut in. He looked tired, and it wasn't even first period yet. His shoulders rose as he inhaled. In his eyes, Freya could see he had lifted this burden many times before. That's how Freya would describe him. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is all her POV. Every single word that's written in this that's not a Starball chapter or a Garbuglio chapter is Freya's POV. So apparently there's a cuckold simulator released 2 weeks ago. Wow, you really keep up on the creepy dating sims. So cool, man. Uh, he lifted this load many times before. Mm-hmm. Let's start with you, Mr. Stitch. No matter what was said, physical violence is completely unacceptable. What she said is also unacceptable, Radomir said, staring back. He crossed his arms. Both of your actions are indefensible. Two wrongs do not make a right, and both of you will be disciplined. I will accept the punishment, Radomir said again. Radomir reiterated. Yeah, I like that. I like Radomir reiterating shit. As it stands right now, the punishment is expulsion, Mr. Evers said. Radomir's eyes shot open. At once the stony mask was gone. What? Radomir said, and Freya found herself mouthing the same thing. That's right. I will not let anyone I feel is a danger to other students. I won't let anyone who's a danger to other students remain at Grayson. So when you cross your eyes and lean back acting like you've done the right thing by hitting a young woman, make sure expulsion is a punishment you're willing to accept. So when you're leaning back and acting like you've done the right thing by hitting a young woman, That's right. I won't let anyone who is a danger to other students remain at Grayson. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. I won't let anyone who is a danger to other students remain at Grayson. So make sure expulsion is a punishment you're willing to accept. Radomir uncrossed his arms. She cannot. Radomir's voice. She cannot. Radomir struggled to calm down. She cannot say these things. Radomir began too loud, realized it, and lowered his voice. She cannot say these things. Let's get to that. I didn't mean it, Jane pleaded. I don't care. I don't care. Mr. Evers turned on Jane. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you said, which is despicable. You can never unsay it. Freya will never unhear it. You two are supposed to be friends. I'm ashamed of you. Freya began to weep, Jane began to weep anew, and there was no artifice this time. Mr. Evers let her cry it out, and there was no kindly look at the end, no give whatsoever. He meant it. Freya was taken aback by the response. It was all so severe. What will you do? Radomir asked. That depends on what you two will do. If you two can shake hands and apologize, I will put both of you in. I'll put both of you. Yeah. I'll put both of you in in-school suspension for the rest of the week. At the end of it, the three of you will meet here for a mediation session. And if you convince me this is over and won't be a problem again, that'll be the end of it. If I'm not convinced, further disciplinary action is on the table. Participating in after-school activities is a privilege, and I expect more from people involved in leadership. When she'd walked into the office, Freya had been fairly sure Radomir would never apologize. She hadn't expected Mr. Evers to wield the fear of punishment so effectively. She watched Radomir and Jane shake hands and apologize to each other, then to Freya, and they really did seem sorry. Mr. Evers filled out the paperwork, sending them both to ISS for a week. He asked Freya to wait in his office. The rain was through. The sky was pale and cloudless. She watched Radomir and Jane shake hands, and yeah, so I like this like confidence that Mr. Evers is showing right here in maneuvering children to apologize to each other. I like that. Because before you see the Mr. Evers character is kind of like, oh, when I was a kid, I was so sad, parish priest, and so forth. And I think it's like a real trope to show school administrators as being just sort of out of touch and irrelevant. And that has nothing to do with the day to day for school administrators. They really are dealing with just like a tremendous amount of bullshit all the time. And like kids are assholes. They really, I was like a huge asshole as a kid. I'm still an asshole today, but just order of magnitude worse of an asshole as a child. And yeah, like the vast majority of these people are extremely effective at a poorly compensated and shitty job. So just putting it out there. I like that this character is able to do this. Okay, so Jane is wrong. She watched Radomir and Jane shake hands and apologize to each other. And they really did. They really did seem sorry. Mr. Evers filled out the paperwork sending them both to ISS for the week. He asked Freya to wait in his office and left with Radomir and Jane. It seemed like forever until he returned. The weight on her grew heavier and heavier as she stared out the window. The rain was through. The sky was pale and colorless. I was really hoping not to see you again for a while, Mr. Evers said when he returned. The words struck her, and she had to force herself to lift her head up and respond. If she didn't, things would get worse. I tried to walk away, Freya said, and he nodded. Again, you're not in trouble. We're just concerned about you. You weren't really planning to expel Radomir, were you? She asked. I might have, if he'd been stubborn. I'm glad I didn't have to. Let's focus on you, please. How's the therapy going? Good. It's helping, Freya said, but of course it was a lie. The therapy had done nothing. It was all the starball. Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of her locker. What do we got here? Oh shit, shoutouts to Martin. Makes me hear the theme music from the Martin Lawrence sitcom, Martin, which was a, what's that, like late 90s black sitcom. It was all right. There's a lot of fucking cross-dressing in that. Like, I'm glad that the trope of black men cross-dressing is like out in the open and people are doing it less. That shit was always happening there. Mm. What do we got there? Oh wait, is Eraser talking about going to the MT Dubs trial? Damn. God. He's have to make some sketches. Yeah, I think he's in federal court, so you don't get to take a video recording or anything like that. That's the damn thing about interstate crime. I think every trial should be live streamed. That'd be fucking dope. I would watch court TV all day, even the boring shit. Mm. You could have like a fucking tip feed for court costs. It'd be amazing. You know what I'm saying? Mm. Wait, actually, wait. As I'm saying this, why isn't that a fucking thing? Like a live stream from courts? Oh my god, that could actually be really decent. Because I mean, all this stuff is meant to be public. You don't have an expectation of privacy in a courtroom. At that point, you've fucked up. Yeah, very interesting. I think it's an interesting thought. I'm not the person to make it happen. But yeah, so Martin is saying it's really impressive. Keep it up. Yeah, I will. We've been going at it for 31 days straight so far. I anticipate it will take between 80 and 100 days to complete this novel. So we're just about a third of the way through. But the thing about writing novels is that they, yeah, sure, feel free to hang out in the chat or whatever. But the thing about writing novels is that they become, it's like not a linear progression of difficulty. It's definitely sort of like an exponential level of difficulty as you get to the later parts. Because at the later parts of the book, every time that you want to make a change, it has to ripple through the entire book. So that's why we're trying so hard to get things right here, because like the later it gets in the book, the harder it is to make those changes. It's like fucking meddling with time. What do we go here? Shot us to my time machine. Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of the locker. She'd been imagining a suit made of... Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of the locker. Her mind had been boiling with thoughts of the locker and how she would get the starball out of it. She'd been imagining a suit of armor made out of aluminum foil, using barbecue tongs to retrieve the starball, then sealing it back inside the meteorite with duct tape, just in case everybody didn't already think she was insane. But the more she tried to picture herself doing that, the more certain she became she wouldn't do it. The more certain she became she knew she wouldn't do it. That's a terrible sentence. Ugh, wretched. But she knew she wouldn't actually go through with that. It was far more likely she would just never open the locker again. When she thought of that, she began to... When she thought of that, she began to... Considering it, she began to worry about the starball heating up until it went China syndrome and melted right through the locker, rolling down the hall after her and seeking revenge. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He just sat and watched her until she returned. Mr. Evers caught her drifting. He sat and watched her until she returned, his face heavy with worry. So, you want to tell me what's actually going on here? I mean, with you, I think I have a pretty good handle. I mean, with you, I think I have a pretty good handle on what happened in the hallway this morning. It's even dumber than it seems. Dan and I just literally talked to each other. We're not dating. Jane went crazy over nothing. She's been really off the rails since her parents got divorced. Her mom's been in China since June, and her dad works all the time. I'm going to talk with Mr. Yang. She's been having a tough year academically. I get the feeling she could really use some help from her friends to get her back on track. Well, I really can't help you there. Obviously, we aren't friends anymore. You might be again, he offered. She told me to kill myself in front of a crowd of people because a guy she likes gave me a ride home. I think I'll pass. Okay, that's totally reasonable. I just keep an open mind. Jane really does regret a lot of what she said. She's going to feel terrible about that for a long time. She should, Freya said. She didn't want to explain the rest. She wasn't about to tell the principal Jane was getting high and probably hooking up with Malcolm Lewis. I feel like we breezed through some of this chapter here. It's even dumber than it seems. Dan and I literally just talked to each other. We're not dating. It's even dumber than it seems. Dan and I literally just talked to each other last night. Dan and I literally just talked to each other and he gave me a ride home. We're not into each other. Jane went crazy over nothing. She's been really off the rails since her parents' divorce. Mm-hmm. Sounds familiar, Mr. Evers said. Freya squinted at him. Uh, was he talking about her going crazy? Freya frowned at him, wondering if he was implying she was crazy and he was tired of dealing with her. Ooh, I like that. I like that because it's like a conversational misstep, and you can see she's about to leap on him, but then he heads her off at the pass because he recognizes that he misspoke. I like that dynamic. It's conversational tension, which is good. Mm-hmm. I mean, typical high school relationship stuff, he added, seeing her look. How is Jane doing otherwise? She's been really off the rails since her parents got divorced. Her mom's been in China since June, and her dad works all the time. I'm going to talk with Mr. Yang. Jane's been having a tough year academically. Jane's been having a tough year academically. I get the feeling she could really use help from her friends to get her back on track. Well, I really can't help her there. Obviously, we aren't friends anymore. You might be again, Mr. Evers offered. Mr. Evers offered. She told me to kill myself in front of a crowd of people because the guy she likes gave me a ride home. I think I'll pass. That's totally reasonable. I just keep an open mind. Jane really does regret what she said. She's going to feel terrible about that for a long time. She should, Freya said. She didn't want to explain the rest. She wasn't about to tell the principal Jane was getting high and probably hooking up with Malcolm Lewis. She'd thought about telling him about the fight that almost happened, but then she really would be a snitch. She thought about telling him about the fight that almost happened. She thought about telling him about the... Freya considered telling him about how Malcolm... Okay. Freya considered telling him about Malcolm crashing the party, calling her names, and almost getting into a fight, but then she really would be a snitch on top of everything else. Dan Gregulus is a good kid. He's going places, Mr. Evers began, changing the topic when she saw she would not budge. I know it may not seem like it at the moment, but you are too. You have tremendous potential. It's not my business what either of you do. Just please stay safe. You have your whole lives ahead of you. Now she felt the first clear emotions she'd had since she sealed the starball in her locker. Anger. I said nothing happened, and I meant it. I don't have anything to hide. Dan goes to the same therapist as me. That's what we talked about. He's a really good guy. Freya's words came out much more severe than she intended, and Mr. Evers paused, nodding with his bottom lip tight. Okay, I apologize. That's just one of the things I need to say, just in case. I was aware of the therapist connection. I just needed to respect Dan's privacy the same as I would yours. Just as a heads up, I'm going to speak with Dr. Garbuglio about the situation here at school. We tried to contact your mother, but she's not answering her cell phone. She's hiking. Probably no reception. When will she return? Saturday, Freya replied, though she had no clue. She was aware she'd just locked herself into a problem. If Lassa didn't return by Saturday, she might need to report the whole thing to the authorities. She probably needed to do that anyway. You're on your own for an entire week? Mr. Evers asked, looking a little incredulous. Why not? I'm 16. I have something to do almost every night anyway. Guitar practice tonight, Krav Maga Thursday or Wednesday, therapy Thursday. Even if Lassa were home, I'd barely see her. It's not a big deal. Mr. Evers had a clouded expression. She didn't need telepathy. Oh. She didn't need telepathy. She didn't need Selig's telepathy to realize he didn't approve. The same way he didn't approve of her not going to church. For all of his shrugging, it's not my business what either of you do. For all his shrugging, it's not my business what either of you do. He was judging her. There was a scoreboard in his mind running all the time, keeping track of who was a good little Catholic and who wasn't. She could tell him right now that she'd been thinking about going to church, and he would swell up with joy and say something worthless and equivocal. All the while it would be crystal clear how he really felt. Mm-hmm. She could tell him right now. There was a scoreboard running in his mind all the time, keeping track of who was a good little Catholic and who wasn't. She could tell him right now she'd been thinking about going to church, and he would swell up with joy, say something equivocal while his face shouted approval. But she couldn't summon... Yeah, it should be expression. But she couldn't summon the effort to pretend. Instead, he just drew a deep... Mr. Evers drew a deep breath and settled behind his desk, filling out a form. Freya stared at him. Ever since she'd finished dying inside, she kept trying to picture what other people were thinking, wishing she could read their minds. What would it be like to walk around like Mr. Evers, with that whole orthodox apparatus sitting on top of her, coloring every thought? He never had to wonder what was right. All the people he lost were waiting for him, as long as he did what he was supposed to. All he had to do was surrender and obey. She blinked, thinking about the violet sphere sitting in her locker. You can't just surrender, Lassa had told her, but she wanted to. Anywhere was better than here. Anyone was better than her. Are you okay to go back to class? Mr. Evers asked when he finished with the form. Yes, Freya lied. Okay, so that is chapter 44 coming up. Okay, cool. I think that's a good start at the chapter. Definitely needs that second pass of rereading right there. So it's like an interesting dynamic that we have right there. We're seeing, so what do we accomplish in this chapter? We resolve a little bit of that tension between Freya and Jane right there. We have like some reasonable consequences, I think, for this. We show a little bit more of what's going on in the school's administration. More so, we show her, just her thought process as she's wondering what people are thinking. You're getting to see that she doesn't think a whole lot about religion, which we had talked about a little earlier in the chapter, like where she would be very atheist as a result of the death of her father. And the fact that she was raised by a woman who has a lot of contempt for religion, and her father seemed like fairly non-committal in the other thing. I really like I like her trying to get inside of the principal's head, just scrutinizing him and thinking about what it must be like to walk around as a relatively strict Catholic. That's all really neat to me. I like this chapter a lot, and I think we've done a few good things with him right here, where she wants to tell him about this thing with Malcolm, but then she doesn't want to be a snitch, which is like reasonable. I think it both gives some insight into the character, and it's a point where the reader will be like, okay, yeah, good on you, don't snitch, Freya, because I think most readers are not down with dropping the dime. What do we got here? And we build a little tension on things. This is a good chapter. This does a lot of things that we want to do in the story. And God, if we went for one more chapter, we could get up to 300 page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No. Maybe I'll have time to edit some more later today, but I think we've done what we set out to do here. So I want to shout out to everybody who made it through the stream. Y'all some real ones right there. And enjoy the intro one final time. I love this intro.